The assault began at dawn. Marcus had spent the night working frantically to convert the ancient Dragon communication array into something that could interface with modern galactic networks. It was like trying to connect a symphony orchestra to a digital music player, but gradually, impossibly, it was working. The Dragons had used the time to explore deeper into the facility, discovering defensive systems that had been dormant for millennia. The ancient sanctuary wasn't just a school and communications hub. When necessary, it had been designed to withstand siege. 12 ships, Bass reported through their mental link as he monitored the approaching fleet from a high observation chamber. Military grade. They're not playing games anymore. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool air inside the facility. This wasn't just about recapturing 3 escaped dragons anymore. Word had spread that someone was activating ancient technology on Zarian 7, and the corporate interests behind the dragon hunting operation weren't willing to risk exposure. "How long until the communication array is ready?" Arya asked, her mental voice tight with worry. "Maybe an hour," Marcus replied, his hands flying over the hybrid interface he had cobbled together from dragon technology and human components cannibalized from his toolkit. "The ancient systems are more complex than anything I've ever seen, but also more elegant. Your people were incredibly advanced." Melody corrected gently. "We are advanced. We simply chose harmony over conquest." The first bombardment shook the entire mountain. The corporate ships were using mining lasers to blast their way through the facility's outer defenses, turning ancient stone into vapor and molten slag. But the deeper shields held, and the energy fields that protected the sanctuary's core simply absorbed the incoming fire and grew stronger. "They don't understand what they're attacking," Base observed with grim satisfaction. "The more energy they pour into the shields, the more powerful our defenses become." Marcus felt the truth of that statement through their connection. The ancient dragon technology worked on principles of harmony and balance, converting destructive force into protective energy. It was a perfect metaphor for the difference between human and dragon approaches to problems, but even perfect defenses could be overwhelmed given enough time and firepower. And Marcus knew the corporations had both. "We need to buy more time," he said, looking up from his work. "Can you 3 create some kind of distraction?" The dragons exchanged glances, then Arya made a decision that surprised Marcus. "Not us," she said. "You? Me? What can I do?" Instead of answering with words, Arya guided Marcus to place his hands on the central control interface again. The flow of power through the ancient systems intensified, and suddenly Marcus could sense every system in the facility as, if it were part of his own body. He could feel the defensive shields humming with absorbed energy. He could sense the communication array spreading its tendrils across the galaxy, making connections with relay stations and networks that hadn't been active for thousands of years. Most importantly, he could feel the facility's offensive capabilities coming online. "Your people called this place a sanctuary," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. "But it's also a fortress." "When necessary," Arya confirmed. "Our ancestors built these places to protect the young ones learning to use their abilities. Sometimes protection requires strength." Marcus reached out through the facility systems and found weapons that defied his understanding of physics. Not crude energy cannons or missile launchers, but devices that could manipulate reality itself. Gravity distorters that could crush a ship like paper. Harmonic resonators that could shake apart molecular bonds. Time dilation fields that could slow incoming projectiles to a crawl. "I can't use these," he said, pulling his hands back from the controls. "I don't understand them well enough. I might hurt innocent people." The crews of those ships are following orders," Melody added thoughtfully. "Many probably don't know the truth about what their employers are doing." That gave Marcus an idea. Instead of using the facility's weapons, he reached out to its communication systems and did something that would have been impossible with purely human technology. He hacked every ship in the attacking fleet simultaneously. The ancient dragon communication array didn't just send messages. It could interface directly with any electronic system, creating connections that bypassed normal security protocols. Within seconds, Marcus was inside the navigation computers, life support systems, and communication networks of all 12 attacking ships. "Attention all ships," he broadcast directly to their internal communication systems. "This is Marcus Chung, formerly of the cargo vessel Stellar Merchant. I am transmitting evidence of illegal activities being conducted on Zarion 7. He began uploading the data he had extracted from the facility's memory cores. Historical records showing the Dragon's original claim to dozens of worlds in this sector. Scientific evidence of their intelligence and complex civilization. Documentation of the capture and enslavement of sentient beings. Most importantly, he uploaded the Dragon's own testimony. Their memories and experiences translated into formats that human minds could understand." The response was immediate. Several ships began to pull back as their crews realized what they were really participating in. Others continued their attack, but with noticeably less intensity. Marcus could hear heated arguments over their communication channels as crew members debated whether to continue following orders. "This is Captain Morrison. Corporate security," came a response from the lead ship. "You are interfering with a legitimate business operation. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." "This is Marcus Chun, witness to genocide," Marcus replied. "And I'm about to make sure the whole galaxy knows what you've been doing." He activated the main communication array. The sensation was incredible. Marcus felt his consciousness expand across light years of space as the ancient network came fully online. Dragon relay stations that had been dormant for millennia suddenly sparked to life, creating a communication web that spanned half the galaxy. Every major news network received the transmission simultaneously. Every government communication hub. Every corporate headquarters. Every university and research institution. The evidence of the Dragon's true nature and the crimes committed against them flooded across galactic civilization in a matter of minutes. Marcus felt the moment when the truth reached critical mass. News anchors interrupted regular programming to report on the discovery of an ancient intelligent species. Government officials issued emergency statements. Corporate stocks began to crash as investors realized the legal implications. Most importantly, other dragons began to respond. Through the ancient network, Marcus felt their presence. Hidden communities scattered across dozens of worlds, family groups that had been in hiding for generations, young dragons who had never seen a proper sanctuary. They were few, pitifully few compared to what their civilization had once been. But they were alive, and now they knew they weren't alone. "The whole galaxy is talking about us," Arya said, wonder in her mental voice. "For the first time in centuries, people know we exist. Some of them are angry," Base reported, monitoring the incoming transmissions. "The governments that unknowingly signed off on dragon hunts. The corporations that realized they've been paying for captured sentience. Others are afraid," Melody added. "They don't know what we might do now that we're no longer secret." Marcus felt that fear through the communication network, and he understood it. Humanity had built an interstellar civilization based partly on the exploitation of what they thought were uninhabited worlds. Learning that many of those worlds had original inhabitants who were still alive changed everything. "We need to show them we're not looking for revenge," Marcus said. "This can't turn into a war." "Agreed," Arya said. "But we also can't let things go back to the way they were. Our people deserve to reclaim their worlds, their heritage." Outside the facility, the corporate attack had stopped entirely. Most of the ships were retreating, their crews unwilling to continue an operation that was now under galactic scrutiny. The few remaining vessels were maintaining a defensive perimeter, probably waiting for new orders from corporate headquarters. Marcus began composing a new transmission, this one directed at the galactic community as a whole. With the Dragon's help, he crafted a message that conveyed both their peaceful intentions and their legitimate claims to their ancestral worlds. "People of the galaxy," the message began. "We are the Draconis, the original inhabitants of 47 worlds in the Zarion sector. For 50 years we have watched as our homes were taken and our children were captured and sold. Today that ends." The message outlined a simple proposal. the establishment of a joint commission to oversee the return of dragon worlds to dragon control, with guarantees for the rights of current human and alien inhabitants. It wasn't about driving anyone out, but about recognition and coexistence. We offer our knowledge freely to any who would learn from it, the message continued. Our technology was designed to work in harmony with natural systems, to enhance life rather than exploit it. We believe our two species have much to offer each other. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Within hours, the Galactic Council had issued an emergency resolution recognizing the Draconis as. The journey across the scorching desert took 2 hours, but it felt like minutes to Marcus. Riding on Arya's back was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The dragons moved as if they were swimming through the sand, their bodies creating no friction, no resistance. They flowed across the landscape like water finding its course. Bass and melody flanked them, keeping perfect formation despite melody's recent freedom from the neural disruptor. The silver dragon was getting stronger with each passing minute, her scales becoming more brilliant as her natural abilities returned. Marcus noticed that all 3 dragons seemed to absorb energy from the twin suns rather than being weakened by them. Unlike every other living thing on XERA-7. As they approached the rock formation Marcus had spotted, it became clear that his guess had been correct. What looked like natural stone from a distance was actually ancient architecture, worn down by countless years of sandstorms and heat. The structure was massive, easily the size of a small city, carved directly into a mountain of red stone. "This is old," Marcus said, more to himself than to the dragons. "Really old." Arya slowed as they reached the base of the structure. Up close, Marcus could see intricate designs carved into the stone, symbols that didn't match any alien language he recognized. The carvings seemed to shift and move in the bright sunlight, creating an optical illusion that was both beautiful and unsettling. More importantly, there was an entrance. A triangular doorway, just large enough for the dragons to pass through, had been carved into the rock face. The opening was partially filled with sand, but it was clearly passable. "This place was built for creatures your size," Marcus observed as he climbed down from Arya's back. "Not humans, not any of the species I know. It was built for dragons." All 3 dragons were staring at the entrance with expressions Marcus was learning to read. Surprise, recognition, and something that might have been reverence. Bass made his thunder sound, and approached the carved symbols near the entrance. He touched one with his snout, and to Marcus's amazement, it began to glow with a soft blue light. One by one, other symbols along the doorway started to illuminate, creating a pattern that pulsed like a heartbeat. "You know this place," Marcus said. "Or at least your people do." Arya made a complex musical phrase and gestured toward the entrance, then to the horizon where their pursuers were closing in. The message was clear. Explanations would have to wait. They entered the ancient structure, just as Marcus heard the distant sound of aircraft engines. Their hunters had found the tracking signal from the disabled neural disruptor and were closing in fast. Inside the structure, the temperature dropped immediately. The walls were lined with the same glowing symbols they had seen outside, providing a soft blue illumination that was easy on the eyes after hours in the blazing desert sun. The corridors were wide and tall, clearly designed for creatures much larger than humans. "This way," Marcus said, pointing deeper into the complex. "We need to find somewhere defensible, and hopefully somewhere with another way out." The dragons followed him through a maze of corridors and chambers. The architecture was unlike anything in human or alien databases. Everything was curved and flowing, as if the entire structure had been grown rather than built. The walls, floor, and ceiling seemed to ripple with an inner energy that made Marcus's skin tingle. They found what they were looking for in the heart of the complex. A large circular chamber with multiple entrances and a raised platform in the center. Ancient machinery lined the walls, dormant but somehow still humming with potential energy. Most importantly, there were at least 6 different passages leading out of the chamber, giving them multiple escape routes. Marcus climbed onto the central platform and examined the machinery more closely. It was clearly a control system of some kind, with interfaces designed for clawed hands rather than human fingers. The technology was far beyond anything he had seen before, but the basic principles looked familiar. "This is a shield generator," he said, running his hands over the smooth control surfaces. "A really big one. This whole facility was some kind of sanctuary, wasn't it? A safe place." Arya approached the platform and made questioning sounds. She gestured to the controls and then to Marcus, tilting her head in the universal gesture of curiosity. "I think I can activate it," Marcus said, "but I don't know what will happen. This technology is way beyond human understanding. For all I know, turning it on might bring the whole mountain down on our heads." The sound of explosions echoed through the corridors. Their pursuers had arrived and were blasting their way into the structure. "Then again," Marcus said, "we might not have a choice." He placed his hands on the control interfaces and tried to make sense of the alien systems. The machinery responded to his touch, symbols lighting up and changing as he manipulated different controls. It was like trying to play a musical instrument he had never seen before, but some of the basic concepts were universal. Power flow, energy regulation, activation sequences. "Marcus incoming." He heard Base's thunder voice, but the word was in his head rather than his ears. Somehow, the dragon was communicating telepathically. "You can talk?" Marcus said aloud. "Not talk," Arya's voice whispered in his mind, musical and warm. "Share thoughts?" "Ancient place makes connection possible." "No time to explain," Melody added, her mental voice like silver chimes. "Hunters coming." "Many hunters." Marcus looked up from the controls to see armed figures in environmental suits, entering the chamber through 3 different passages. They carried energy weapons and moved with military precision. These weren't just poachers or criminals. They were professionals. "Surrender the specimens and you will not be harmed," one of them announced through a voice amplifier. "We have authorization to retrieve the escaped property." Property. They were calling these magnificent, intelligent creatures property. Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, real anger. Not just annoyance or frustration, but the kind of deep, burning rage that came from witnessing true injustice. "Property?" he called back. "These are intelligent beings, not objects to be owned." "The law says otherwise," the leader replied. "The Draconis albinus specimens were legally acquired through the Zarian Biological Survey." "You are interfering with a legitimate corporate operation." "Draconis albinus?" Marcus repeated. "You gave them a scientific name like they're lab animals?" Through their mental connection, he felt the dragon's emotions. Pain, humiliation, fear. They had been captured, studied, experimented on. Treated like objects instead of the thinking, feeling beings they clearly were. "This ends now," Marcus said, and activated the shield generator. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The entire chamber filled with brilliant blue light as energy fields activated throughout the ancient structure. The machinery along the walls came to life, humming with power that had been dormant for who knew how many centuries. But the shields weren't just for protection. As the energy fields stabilized, Marcus felt his connection with the dragon strengthen and expand. He could sense their thoughts more clearly, feel their emotions, understand their communications. More than that, he could feel their natural abilities awakening in response to the ancient technology. Arya was the first to discover what she could do in this place. She raised her head and sang a note that resonated through the stone itself. The sound waves became visible, rippling through the air like liquid music. When they struck the hunter's energy weapons, the devices simply dissolved. Their molecular bonds disrupted by harmonic frequencies. Bass followed her lead. But his deep thunder voice had a different effect. The stone floor beneath the hunter's feet began to vibrate and crack. Not enough to collapse the chamber, but enough to throw them off balance and make it impossible to aim any remaining weapons. Melody's contribution was the most beautiful and terrifying. Her silver bell voice created patterns of light that danced through the air like living things. When the light patterns touched the hunter's environmental suits, the fabric began to change, becoming permeable to the outside air. In the thin atmosphere of Zarian 7, they would need to retreat to their ships or suffocate. Amazing, Marcus breathed, watching the hunters scramble for the exits. This place amplifies your natural abilities. You're not just dragons, you're some kind of reality manipulators. Not just us, Arya said in his mind. You too. Touch the central control. Marcus placed both hands on the main control interface and felt power flow through him like electricity. But this wasn't painful. It was energizing, awakening parts of his mind he had never known existed. Suddenly, he could sense the entire structure around them, feel the energy flowing through its systems, understand its purpose. This wasn't just a sanctuary. It was a school, a place where young dragons came to learn how to use their abilities safely. The ancient machinery was designed to enhance and focus their natural talents, helping them understand the deeper connections between sound, light, matter, and energy. Your people built this place, he said, the knowledge flowing into his mind from the facility's data cores. Thousands of years ago, before humans ever left Earth, this whole planet was a training ground for young dragons? Was, Vase rumbled sadly in Marcus's thoughts. Until the others came, drove us away, scattered the schools, turned our sacred places into mining colonies and Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished calibrating the last engine on the trading vessel Stellar Merchant. The desert planet Zarian 7 was not the kind of place anyone wanted to spend more time than necessary, but the job paid well enough to make the heat bearable. At least that's what he had thought when Captain Voss hired him for this supposedly simple maintenance contract. The red sand outside the ship's hull shimmered in waves of heat that could kill an unprotected human in hours. Marcus had been working on starships for 15 years, ever since he left Earth's overcrowded colonies. He was good with his hands and better with alien technology than most humans. That skill had taken him across the galaxy, fixing everything from Zentari pulse drives to Corvan atmospheric processors. Chun, get up here, Captain Voss called through the ship's comm system. His voice carried that edge it always had when something was wrong. Marcus climbed up from the engine bay, his toolkit clanking against his leg. The main deck was cooler, but not by much. Through the viewports, he could see the endless expanse of crimson desert stretching toward the horizon. No cities, no settlements, just sand and rock formations that looked like ancient bones bleaching in the twin suns. Captain Voss stood near the navigation console with 3 other crew members. Marcus had never liked the look in their eyes. They were the kind of spacers who saw other people as tools to be used and discarded when no longer useful. But the pay had been too good to refuse, and Marcus needed the credits to buy his own ship eventually. Job's done, Captain, Marcus said, setting his toolkit down. Your engines are running at 98% efficiency. Should get you wherever you're going without any trouble. Voss nodded slowly, but his smile was wrong. Too wide, too cold? Actually, Chan, there's been a change of plans. The first sign of real trouble was when Crix, the ship's security officer, moved to block the exit. The second was when Voss pulled out a stun weapon and pointed it at Marcus's chest. What's this about? Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady. He had been in bad situations before, but never quite like this. Simple business, really, Voss said. See, we've got a buyer for some very specific cargo. Rare stuff. The kind that certain collectors will pay millions for. But the problem is, our cargo is hidden in a place that's, let's say, heavily protected. Marcus glanced around the room. The other crew members had weapons drawn now, too. And what does that have to do with me? Well, our buyer knows you've been here before. Knows you've worked on salvage operations in this system. They specifically requested that we bring you along for the job. Voss's grin got wider. Of course, they also mentioned that once the job is done, there shouldn't be any witnesses left to talk about it. The stunned blast hit Marcus before he could move. The world went white, then black dot when consciousness returned. Marcus found himself buried up to his neck in scorching sand. The twin suns blazed overhead, and the desert heat was already making his vision blur. His arms were tied behind his back beneath the sand, and his legs were bound as well. Only his head was exposed to the merciless environment. "Sorry about this, Chun," Voss called from somewhere behind him. Marcus couldn't turn his head far enough to see the ship. "Nothing personal. Just business. The desert will take care of the rest." The sound of engines firing up echoed across the wasteland, then faded into silence. Marcus was alone. The heat was incredible. Even with his enhanced metabolism modifications that helped humans survive in various alien environments, Marcus could feel his body starting to shut down. The sand around his neck was like being buried in a furnace. He had maybe 6 hours before dehydration killed him. Less if he couldn't find shade. He started working on his bonds immediately. The rope around his wrists was standard utility cord, strong but not impossible to break with enough effort. The problem was that every movement made the sand shift and settle tighter around his body. He had to be careful not to let it cover his mouth and nose. Hours passed. The suns tracked slowly across the sky, and Marcus felt his strength ebbing away. His throat was raw and dry, and his vision kept wavering. He had managed to work one hand partially free, but not enough to dig himself out. The sand was too loose above and too packed below. That's when he heard the sound. It was low and mournful, like singing mixed with the wind. But there was no wind on Zarian 7 during the day. The atmosphere was too thin and still. Marcus strained to listen, wondering if dehydration was making him hallucinate. The sound came again, closer this time. Definitely not human, but not like any alien species he knew either. It had a musical quality that seemed to resonate in his bones. Then he saw them. 3 shapes moving across the desert about 100 meters away. At first, Marcus thought they were some kind of vehicles, but as they got closer, he realized they were alive. They moved with a flowing, serpentine grace that no machine could match. Dragons, actual dragons, they were smaller than the creatures from Earth's old legends, about the size of large horses, but unmistakably draconic. Their scales were pure white, almost glowing in the harsh sunlight. Unlike the mythical dragons of human stories, these had no wings. Instead, they seemed to flow across the sand like liquid metal, their bodies undulating in perfect rhythm. Albino alien dragons. On a desert planet where nothing was supposed to live except microscopic organisms, the Lied dragon stopped about 20 meters from Marcus. Its head was elegant and serpentine, with large silver eyes that seemed far too intelligent for any animal. It looked directly at him, tilted its head, and made that musical sound again. Marcus tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. He could only make a croaking noise. The dragon approached slowly, cautiously. Its companions followed, and Marcus could see that they were all injured. The lead dragon had burn marks along its flanks, and one of the others was limping badly. The third one looked the worst, with what appeared to be metal cables wrapped around its body, cutting into the white scales. When the lead dragon was close enough, Marcus could see that its silver eyes held something he recognized: pain, fear, and something else that made his heart race. Intelligence, not animal cunning, but real, thinking intelligence. The dragon lowered its head until it was only a few inches from Marcus's face. Up close, he could see that its scales weren't just white, but seemed to contain tiny flecks of silver and blue that shifted in the light. Its breath was surprisingly cool, carrying a scent like ozone and winter air. "Help!" Marcus croaked, barely able to make the sound. The dragon's eyes widened, and it pulled back suddenly. It made several rapid musical sounds to its companions, who approached more closely. They had a brief exchange of the singing sounds, and then the lead dragon looked back at Marcus. Slowly, carefully, it began to dig. The dragon's claws were perfectly designed for moving sand. They were long and narrow, able to slice through the packed desert soil like knives. But what amazed Marcus most was how careful the creature was being. It could have easily torn him apart with those claws, but instead it was excavating around him with surgical precision. The other 2 dragons joined in, working together to free him from his sandy prison. The one with the cables around its body was clearly in pain, but it still helped as much as it could. Within an hour, Marcus was free. He collapsed immediately, his legs too weak to hold him up. The dragons gathered around him, their cool presence providing some relief from the blazing heat. The lead dragon disappeared for a few minutes and returned with something Marcus couldn't believe. Water. Somehow, the dragon had found water in the middle of the most arid desert on the planet. It was carrying the liquid in its mouth, and it carefully let it drip onto Marcus's lips. The water was clean and cold, and it saved his life. As Marcus's strength slowly returned, he got a better look at his rescuers. The burns on their scales looked like energy weapon damage. The cables around the third dragon were clearly some kind of restraint, probably electronic given the small blinking lights along their length. These creatures had been captured and hurt, and they had escaped. "You're not from here either, are you?" Marcus said, his voice still rough but functional. The lead dragon tilted its head and made a questioning sound. Marcus pointed to himself. "Marcus." Then he pointed to the dragon. "What do I call you?" The dragon seemed to consider this, then made a complex musical phrase that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "That's beautiful, but I can't pronounce it," Marcus said with a weak smile. "How about Arya?" The dragon, Arya, seemed pleased with this. She made the same musical phrase again, then pointed to her companions with her snout. One made a sound like distant thunder, which Marcus decided to call bass. The injured one made a lighter, more delicate sound that reminded him of silver bells, so he called her Melody. "Okay." "Arya, bass, Melody," Marcus said, trying to sit up straighter. "We're all in trouble here, aren't we?" Arya made a complex series of sounds and gestured toward the horizon with her head. Marcus followed her gaze and saw something that made his blood run cold. Smoke, black smoke rising from several points on the horizon, too regular to be natural. "They're hunting you," Marcus realized. "Someone captured you, and now they're tracking you down?" Arya nodded, a very human gesture that seemed oddly natural for her. She gestured to the cables around Melody's body and made angry sounds. Then she